And welcome everyone to the April 2023 edition of the New York Space Business Roundtable. We're excited to have you. We thank you for being here. This is going to be the first of a series that kicks off for the second quarter of 2023, focusing on commercial space infrastructure. And with that, I am pleased to let you know we are temporarily having everyone on mute. However, the chats are open. We welcome your comments, questions, thoughts, ideas in the chat. As we go along, we will take questions from the chats if we have the opportunity. Certainly at the end, around the 1 o'clock mark, we leave an extra 15 minutes for questions from the audience. So if we haven't addressed them during the course of the meeting, we will certainly get a chance to thereafter. And with that, I am happy to introduce Mr. Louis Zaccarilla, who is the Director of Innovation for SSPI. Welcome, Lou.
Well, thank you, Tamara, and thank you for getting us going here today. It's the third Wednesday of the month, so it must be the New York Space Business Roundtable. I am Lou Zaccarilla, and the Director of Innovation, as Tamara said, and also the host of the Better Satellite World podcast. So welcome everyone, and welcome back our loyal listeners. We really appreciate you being back with us, and happy spring to everyone. Today's guests, many of whom are coming to us directly from the Space Symposium event here in the United States out in Colorado. So we really appreciate that they're making the time to be here with you today. But as one of them said, you know, if we're talking about launch, how can we stay away? So let's launch this program, see what we got. And before we get into the subject and you hear from our guests today at the roundtable, we're going to do a little bit of our typical early stage housekeeping here. So that means actually thanking the people who make this happen, including the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, their trade office in New York, one of our sponsors. We really appreciate their ongoing support for this. Druva Space is another one of our sponsors. And again, we appreciate Druva as they continue to grow their business, gather funding, seek funding. They are going to be one of the companies to reckon with, and of course, be written about in great publications like Space News, where we've got Jason Rainbow representing our media sponsor today, and Jason will be giving his significant digits report live from the Space Symposium. So we're excited to hear from Jason, and also World Teleport Association, our sponsor, the only trade association for operating teleports and their partners around the world. So we appreciate their support because we actually wouldn't be able to do this without them. And as we do every month, we have an opening video for you, and the team's been putting this together, and I have no idea. I haven't seen it yet. So Matt, why don't we roll the video and see what we're going to be looking at? Okay. I knew, guys, it would have something to do with launch. Thank you. There are an awful lot of things in life we can get excited about. The Yankees winning a World Series, having a daughter, Matt Owen and Jason Rainbow. But few of them compare with launch. Those two probably do, but that was where we're going today. And we're going to be talking about launch, why billionaires matter, and what that all means in terms of the state of launch today and why we've arrived at the place we've arrived at and where we go next in terms of building the commercial infrastructure for space. But before I do that, speaking of new arrivals in the family, but also significant digits, Jason Rainbow, you're out in Colorado. Welcome back to the Roundtable.
Hello there. Yeah, I'm at the Space Symposium here in Colorado this week and currently on some hotel Wi-Fi. So I hope I'm coming in loud and clear for you over there.
Absolutely. No, loud and clear. And again, we appreciate the time because I know when you get over at a conference, it's really hard to have you sit down for 10 seconds. So, well, first question, how's it been going out there this week? What's the key observation as it relates perhaps to space?
It's well, firstly, yeah, it's busy. Firstly, there is a lot going on. We're inundated with announcements, all kinds of announcements from not only launch, but space services, space manufacturing side of things. It's tough to manage logistically as journalists, but it's a really positive sign for the health of the industry. But the big pieces of, the two big pieces of launch news that I was hoping to write this week are currently delayed. All eyes are on the Starship launch that's been pushed back to, I think, Thursday. I haven't seen the latest there, but we were also expecting a Falcon Heavy rocket to launch the first Viasat-3 satellite this week, along with the first small GEO satellite for a Californian startup called Astranis, which has been pushed to next week. So still hoping to cover that at some point soon. Hopefully it's not going to be pushed back anymore. But other than that, I think on the launch side of things, the other big news that is getting a lot of attention is what's happening with Virgin Orbit, which recently collapsed into bankruptcy.
Yeah, that was my next question. Before I go there, though, Jason, any reporting or information about what's going on with Rocket Labs or Blue Origin?
I haven't seen anything. I'm been covering them. I've been mostly focusing on the financial panels that are going on here, and I can say just including launch, the kind of thing that struck me is just the overwhelming amount of optimism that's out there in the industry at the moment, not only from launch companies, but their investors too. We're seeing I put out a story recently about how valuations of space companies are starting to kind of come down to the kind of levels that investors are seeing as more reasonable to getting deals done this year. There's been a lot of hype around the sector recently, amplified, of course, by the surge of early stage space companies that went public by merging with a special purpose acquisition company like Rocket Lab. But a lot of these companies have not been performing so well on the public markets, and that's kind of trickling back down to the private industry too. And so we're starting to see valuations come down to kind of a level that investors are saying actually could get some deals done. So that's what surprised me, is just the amount of optimism that's evident here, despite the the gloomy financial the markets that we're currently experiencing.
Yeah. Do you suspect there may be some slowdown in financing for the launch vehicles, which could affect the services providers?
Yeah, well, I mean, not only that, but we're still, I think the number now is 160 launch companies out there trying to get their businesses off the ground. A lot of these won't succeed, the vast majority even. So rather than slow down, a lot of these will probably just appear. But for the select crowd, the ones that are able to not only launch but build that cadence to bring in revenues, there is a lot of optimism there, because launch is something that's desperately needed for these masses of satellites that are going up mostly in the orbit for constellations around the world, and of course increasing focus on defense to get assets up there in orbit, and also to repair and service them once they're in space too. So all this is increasing demand for more launch, but tricky industry. And that's, of course, exemplified by the Virgin Orbit. There is a classic example about even if you have technology that's working and you've done a successful launches, it takes more than that to build a sustainable business.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're going to hear from Volodymyr Levikin of Skyrora shortly on the panel, so he'll have more to say on that. Jason, and Spire as well, which of course is a fast-growing services company that depends on making sure constellations get up, right? Jason, just two more questions. Are there any launch companies we might be overlooking and not paying enough attention to?
I think it's launch companies don't have a hard time getting headlines. Just like you're saying earlier, just their very business is something that captures the imagination. So there's a lot of excitement around there. So I don't have any. Yeah. I think Rocket Lab continuing to go strength to strength is one. I think they're getting a fair amount of attention. Keep a look at those. But also keep an eye on the established launch providers. That they're many of them are introducing new launch vehicles, also experiencing delays to get those out, and how they operate will be critical for the entire sector. So the performance of Arianespace and even in SpaceX, their fate is tied to the rest of the industry, and how other launch companies will find it raising money for their own businesses.
Yeah, we actually were going to have Arianespace on to talk about Arianespace 6, but they were coming back from a launch. So Aaron Lewis, our friend and former board member, couldn't quite get it together for us, but we'll get them on. Hey, so Jason, I'll let you go shortly, but yeah, you mentioned it, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, Virgin Orbit. What's the buzz there?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll give you a quick rundown on the history. It might help. So they spun off from Virgin Galactic in 2017, which is Richard Branson's space tourism venture, and they had planned to do their first launch in 2018, and that slipped out to 2020, but then ultimately failed to reach orbit. They did manage to successfully place satellites into orbit on its second launch, I think in January 2021. However, they just struggled to increase the launch rate since then, which they needed to generate the revenues to cover what are classically high costs in the launch industry. I think there was one more launch in 2021, and then two more in 2022 before another failure earlier this year in the UK, which didn't help their efforts to raise funds from investors. But an important part of their story too is just at the end of 2021, they went public by merging with a SPAC, and one of many early stage companies to do so in recent years. But like a lot of them, they didn't raise as much money as they had hoped from that. There was a lot of SPAC shareholders decided to redeem their stock. So that means Virgin Orbit, they received, I think, about $68 million when they had hoped to pull in something like $382 million. So, ultimately they fell back into bankruptcy after trying to raise more money. And the plan is now to try to get a quick sale done, I think in May, to get back up to speed. So, but I'm hearing it's not a technology problem for them, although they had a few launch failures. It's just how the business was structured, and the kind of not being able to get that frequent launch rate to getting those revenues to sustain their business was what got them in the end. So it sounds like there are a lot of interested buyers that could rescue them next month.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody leading the pack on that, I think?
I don't have any inside information, but there was a very public investor that tried to buy them before they went into bankruptcy, an entrepreneur based in Texas. But that fell through, I think, because of concerns over whether he was able to raise the money or meet some kind of a commitment there. But it might be a different story now that they are in in bankruptcy.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Jason, that was great. Much appreciated. Listen, I know you've got to get back to the show to actually covering all those stories out there, but we really appreciate you calling in this time, because this is going above and beyond. But it was a great report. And they didn't ask you, Virgin didn't ask you for any money, did they?
We don't make that much
Okay.
in this industry, to be honest. But no, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me on again, and
All
yeah,
right.
looking forward to following you this year.
All right, Jason. We'll see you next month.
All right, take care.
Take care. That was Jason Rainbow from Space News, and again, we really appreciate him coming on. You were seeing in the chats some traffic from my colleague Joe Fargnoli. Joe is with the New York Space Alliance, and at the end of our session today, as is always the case, Joe is going to give us the New York Minute, his views of what he's hearing and what's going on in launch. So we're looking forward to that. But it's time to actually meet our guests. And so let me talk to you a little bit about why billionaires matter, why the title. So a Nigerian, British, Canadian outer space lawyer walks into a bar. That's not the start of a joke. That was actually one of our guests today describing herself in a fascinating TED Talk about Space 4.0. She talked about billionaires and where we are today. Billionaires in the space and satellite industry, as you've just heard, take up a lot of oxygen in the popular media and mind. The claims that space, however, is just a playground for the rich kind of hang around like a bad habit, but space is anything but that, especially today, as we know. It is where fortunes will be made, and unthinkable discoveries, life-altering science, new philosophies, and even possibly religions and ways of thinking about ourselves will emerge. It's where our species will go to continue its persistence on Earth, presumably, as Jeff Bezos said, going there will make life here much better. Stay tuned on that one. But to get there, we need to actually get there, and to get there more often, more affordably, and more reliably. And more of us do need to get there, all of us. So thanks to Billionaires, we've started that venture, and it has opened up a pathway for new infrastructure and services, which is our topic today and for the next few roundtables. So today we're going to look at the realities of launch investments and businesses in 2023 from a lot of different angles. So let me introduce our guests. First off, I'm going to go alphabetically. We have Professor Timibe Aganba. She is the assistant professor at the School for the Future of Innovation in Society at Arizona State University here in the United States. Timmy is the founder of the Space Governance Lab. She is, as I mentioned, the aforementioned person in that bar, literally. Her legal experience covers 5 nations. She has been featured in the New York Times, CNN, Forbes, and the Telegraph, discussing the concept of billionaires in space, and we welcome her. John Francis Christian Conafe is the co-founder of Integrate Space. John is a very familiar figure in our industry and around our industry. He's coming to us from Colorado today. John is a U.S. Air Force veteran with a decade of experience on both the spacecraft and launch vehicle sides of the space industry before founding Integrate Space. Space Systems, Spaceflight, Astronis, and Spire Global, one of our guests today. Volodymyr Levikin is the founder and CEO of Skyrora, a British-based launch company with headquarters in Scotland. Mr. Levikin is a tech entrepreneur with a record of starting successful innovative businesses in the UK and Silicon Valley. In 2021, Mr. Levikin was awarded SSPI's UK chapter's Person of the Year Award for his work. Of note, he used private funds to grow his company from a team today of over 100 employees. Skyrora has extensive rocket manufacturing and engineering testing facilities across Scotland. And it is the first company, so far as we know, to complete a successful integrated rocket stage test in the United Kingdom since way back in the 1970s. And hopefully we'll get an update on his Skyrora XL. So welcome, Volodymyr. And we're delighted to get Dr. Robert Sproles here. He is the Vice President of Operations and Constellation Planning at Spire Global, and he's been with Spire for the last 8 years. Spire, as you know, is a provider of space-based data, analytics, and services, and he has been with them for 20 years in technical program development and engineering management. He installed a global ground station network for Spire, led the satellite design team, and today leads operations, launch, communications, ground stations, and constellation planning. Spire has about 150 satellites in what Peter Platzer told investors recently is the listening satellite category. So we're going to listen to Robert as he talks today. He holds a PhD in applied physics from the University of Arkansas with a specialization in rocket engine performance, and he sits on multiple boards, and I'm told is an unpaid chauffeur for teenage kids, for his teenage kids. So welcome, Robert. Good to see you here, and welcome everyone. Well, Timmy, I'm going to start with you because we've got the big question today, which is essentially, what role have billionaires played to get us to this point? And do billionaires really matter when it comes to launch?
Yes. Oh, hi, everyone. Good morning from sunny Arizona. We're really enjoying that. You know, it's so interesting when I look at the title of this discussion, because this concept of billionaires seems to be so triggering. Now, I'm an academic, you know, we're not very rich. We don't really think in billions. And when I started doing my MBA last year, and also during COVID, when it was really announced as the 2020, I think 2021 was the year of the billionaires in space, I was surprised at how triggered all the response from the general public about this concept of space being a playground for the rich, right? Just everyone is suffering, you know, the world is in shambles, and then you've got these people who are just having a 5-minute joyride in space. And that's where you really see that space has a serious messaging problem, right? Because all these actors that were going into space, all these so-called billionaires and rich people have been working on these topics for a really long time. They didn't just one day kind of wake up. And I think that's where the mismatch was. And all those press and the press that you said that I was featured on, CNN, NPR, they were all asking me the same question, because I think everyone expected me as a young Black female to kind of say, this is terrible what they've been doing, and that we should be working on poverty alleviation and all these things. I think the point to say, of course, everyone thinks of Elon, right, and SpaceX, and what did they really bring to the space sector. But as a lawyer, I think what I'm going to look at is the real innovation is in procurement of services, right? So the whole reason that Elon was able to do what he was able to do is a couple of things. NASA actually hired a VC to join that team to get a more kind of investment financing attitude into NASA, and then they worked on the COTS and the Space Act agreements, right? Which were basically developed to help them think more from a let's buy or build a system to let's procure a service. So that's really what I think the real innovation was. And then from there, we were able to get towards this commoditization, right? Being able to convert products and services into more standardized marketable objects. But at the end of the day, I think for me, the real innovation and what these billionaires were able to bring was this culture of procurement of services rather than of systems. So that's just my kind of initial thought as to what their role was.
Oh, that's great. And again, that particular innovation, is not thought about or reported about, but it is fundamental, as you say, to the commoditization of the product, which gets us there, right? And gets us to Space 4.0, which I want to ask you about later, because I thought that was a wonderful approach you took to it in your TED Talk. So thanks for getting us started. John Conifay, the role billionaires have played to get us to this point, and maybe segue into the status of the launch industry today based on where you guys sit at Integrate Space.
Yeah, absolutely. I can kind of go through the road mechanical. Billionaires have always played a part in the expansion of services and exploration. I mean, you think about colonizing the Americas, and obviously they're more triggering words right there. You think about expanding railroads across the United States and throughout the world. Lindbergh and the first plane. It's this triggering aspect of billionaires being, these big evil people that are just now coming around to space and having joyrides to get away from all the problems on Earth is kind of BS. And it's not necessarily argument shouldn't be whether billionaires or why billionaires. It should be, what can we get out of this? It should be, how can we do it differently? There should be conversation about, if this is the wrong way, then what is the right way? And I don't ever quite hear that. Not ever. I don't hear that a lot. So I think just historically, it is a bit of a rote argument. Billionaires have always played a part in exploration. They're going to continue to. And if somebody else has a model, I would love to explore that specifically, because yeah, that's just what we're seeing, is the same replay of the past 200 years.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, so I mean, the association, the analogy, I mean, Queen Isabella, was the billionaire of her era, and she's developing the technology, financing this great adventure over the horizon, and exporting a philosophy as well. So this is not new stuff, but this seems to be even more, potentially more virtuous for us, if I'm hearing the buzz out there.
Yeah, and I think it's reasonably more virtuous, because as we know and understand, or have known for quite some time, and it's being realized, a lot of these exploration efforts were massively problematic. The idea of colonization itself is not necessarily something to be celebrated. The way they were done, there's a lot of fear, and understandably so, around that concept. And so I guess what I'm arguing for is, hell yes, let it be a trigger word. Think through the problem, but think critically. Think how we can actually change this. Think what we can do differently, and how we can actually create these ecosystems in a more sustainable and less problematic way.
Right, and to take a look at the human species as it transforms. Volodymyr, okay, we've started the conversation. You're launching these things. You're about to launch these things. You've been working on it for a long time. I haven't seen your tax returns. I don't know if you're a billionaire or not, but I know you do finance a lot of the project. John Conifay said we should look at what we can get out of the groundwork that's been laid for us in launch. What's your take on what we can get out of it? What can Skyrora get out of it? And where is Skyrora today?
Hi, everyone. Skyrora is still in good progress, right? So on the billionaire point, right, I would like to add that someone shall pay the bills, right? And it used to be the government, as we all know, who was a driver, and basically it was the Cold War was a driver. And it's very good that at the moment, while the market is not mature enough, right, and the market itself, the industry itself cannot sustain itself, right, it cannot realistically attract VCs, in the right volumes and so on, because they want to see the good returns of investments, approved business model and such, which is not the case yet, for none of us, right? And Virgin Orbit, it's unfortunately, it's a good example of exactly what's going on, right? So they actually probably appear to be too early, right? While the market cannot provide enough demand for such kind of technology. So the space is very expensive, high risk, very difficult to do. To do the business in space, it's even more challenging. So the billionaires practically took the role of the governments, right? And they start to lead the whole industry forward, and sometimes they even put not only money, but energy, but, taking the risk of their own life, which I honestly more than respect and admire. So as for Skyrora, unfortunately, I'm not the billionaire. We're trying to do everything way more cost effective, right? So we're trying to be, let's say, not to replicate in any way. So let's say American experience from the past, which is basically build a huge infrastructures on the ground, spaceport, starships and such, which is pure American way, but trying to exhaust the British way, be environment friendly, mobile, with no spaceport, mobile spaceport, bring our infrastructure and be able to launch from empty field. So which we recently, last October, tried to demonstrate in Iceland. So we brought everything, including the vehicle, to the middle of nowhere, north of Iceland. Unfortunately, the permission been delayed and we end up to be in October, which is the start of the very, very, very bad storm season. So, but eventually, when we were there, the Iceland was one of the most windiest places on the planet, with the 200 miles high winds. Yeah, so but between the storms, we actually managed to do the launch attempt, which is a great achievement. Right now, Starter purely focuses on orbital vehicle. We're aiming to do a few more suborbital launches, but our main focus is orbital vehicle right now. So obviously, trying to process what happened with Virgin and other competitors, right? I would disagree with Jason, not with Jason, but with some, the information which journalists are keen to distribute, which is like the launches 140 launch companies. Yes, probably somewhere on the paper with the websites, yes, but who declare themselves as launch companies. But if we're talking about this serious players, we're talking about few worldwide. And it's a quite, let's say, painful for the industry, for those few, 10 whatever, 10, 20 launchers who we see ourselves as a brotherhood, to lost one of them, Virgin Orbit, which is obviously sending not a good signal for the investors and for everyone. And yeah, we'll see. We need to stay strong and be just in the right time in the right place. Not early enough, but not late enough.
Yeah, no, it's
not
interesting.
too late.
Exactly. It's interesting you guys look at yourselves as a brotherhood, right? As opposed to, rivals or competitors. And I have to ask you before I go to Robert, can you just give me a sense from the mind of an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur? This is not your first rodeo, as we say in the United States. When you were thinking conceptually about Skyrora, what triggered, to use that word again, right, John? What triggered that idea? Do you remember where it came from and why you thought it might be a good idea to launch rockets?
Frankly speaking, it was not my idea, but we were all inspired by Elon Musk, right? So I'm originally from IT. I was in Silicon Valley, and IT back days, like in 2016. Sort of look, AI was not that fancy as it is right now, so it was not that much interesting thing to do about. And Elon Musk started to do the SpaceX, and that's where the idea came from. And then I started to try to leverage from my Ukrainian, let's say, background and so on and so on, and replicate the same in the UK in a different way, of course. And but frankly speaking, that is where it came from. So we all jump into the train.
Yeah. Well, again, the billionaires inspiring people as well. I mean, that's a great
Exactly.
example. When we go back to Timmy, we'll kick that around a little bit. But Robert, I want to come to you because Spire is one of those successful business models that when I got into this industry, we weren't even really thinking about. But you guys, I think Peter was telling analysts the other day that your fiscal 23 midpoint guidance was 132 million. I mean, your growth rate is high. You guys are looking good. You depend on launch. You got to keep those constellations healthy, right? Talk to us a little bit about the groundwork that perhaps the billionaires have set up, or in Volodimir's case have inspired, but how Spire thinks about launch in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. So the launch landscape is extremely dynamic, as everybody has said, and it's changed so much over the last 8 years within Spire. 2015 was when we launched our first commercial satellites. We had some experimental satellites before then. Since that time, we've launched over 150 satellites, 35 different launch campaigns on 10 different vehicles. One of the really exciting things about being in this position is that everyone else's success is our success. So we get to root for everyone. Volodymyr, I love what you said about it. It is a brotherhood of these businesses, and the loss of one, we all mourn that. We do depend on each of these launchers, and we're in an interesting time right now where even though capacity is increasing, diversity or options are decreasing. And that's a really weird place to be in a high growth industry, where you have less options today and less ability to go where you want to go today than you did 3 to 5 years ago. So we see, whether it is Skyrora, whether it's Virgin Orbit, Rocket Lab, all of these launchers, we see their success as critical to being able to deliver for not just our own data products, but our customers as well. We see also a skewing towards larger vehicles, and we talk about billionaires, and of course they have a keen business sense, and they always want to know, what is that economy of scale? What is that efficiency factor so that I can be successful? And often this does lead you to larger vehicles. And for Spire, that again takes away some options because we are small satellites and we don't want to just ride the bus. We talk about SpaceX, everybody knows about their transporter missions or their bandwagon missions starting next year. These are wonderful programs if they're going when and where you want to go. But again, we need more options. And so I'm very excited about the market and seeing more of these options become available so that we can go where we want to go, when we want to go.
Yeah. John, you were nodding your head as Robert was speaking. Was there something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, just the incredible, not even to add, but the incredible lack of diversity in launch options right now. It's I think Tori Bruno's been very vocal about it, whether out of self-interest or not. that's perfectly fine. But it's true. Eric Berger just put out a tweet that kind of listed the status of launch vehicles, and then and it's semi-dire. Also the impact of going for larger vehicles for small satellites. We've had over a decade, probably 15 years of this massive growth in the small satellite industry, and now we're in a position where it's okay. It doesn't matter how big or small these are. We're going to lower the cost so much, and you have practically unlimited space compared to what you did. So these entire business models are that have built these small satellites and done a really, really spectacular job of building these proliferated constellations are just like, that doesn't completely work for us. Like we are the
thanks, but not very as helpful as you think it is.
Yeah, exactly. The Leo economy, and we need something different. So agree that it is very hard to see any launch vehicle company go right now from somebody that cares so deeply about the industry and from just a pure business standpoint and diversity of launch options. Yeah, so that's why I was nodding my head the entire way through for the.
Yeah. No, thanks, guys. Timmy, I'm going to go back to you on this because you started talking about the business model, the commoditization, and how important it was. When you hear that there may not be as much diversity in launch services, I know you write and speak a lot about, for example, 14 countries in Africa have a space agency. We kind of need diversity in launch, right? We need more commoditization. We need more sky roars and options like that, don't we? Or is the business site, is business just going to play out the way it's going to play out, and Arianespace and some of the others will be the only launch companies in ISRO, and so be it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really complex when you look at the economics of it, because I mean, even SpaceX, I think they started off with small launcher, right, before they got to where they got to today. And so I think from an economic standpoint, people are still just going to divert, going to go towards where the greatest market is, even though there is this huge market for small sats. I mean, this is why I think air launch was so interesting, right? Because you could, when we had this idea of responsive space, right? How can we've got a whole bunch of satellites, we want to launch them quickly, they can be small, they can be larger, and then we can go wherever we want to around the world. So say these developing countries, they want to be able to launch something, and you can just go over there on your plane and launch from their territory. I think that was a really interesting way that we could have gone when I think of diversifying and having the whole world be able to participate in that. But clearly, like Virgin has shown, it's not easy when you go outside of, the traditional areas. As we're now starting to have spaceports in local jurisdictions, in Arizona here, the Yuma County is just declared that they're going to be having a spaceport. That is really, really interesting. But then when you look at jurisdictions like Camden, when they tried to have a spaceport, they got all the licenses for it and everything. And then the population in that environment did not agree, which means that you've got to get buy-in. It's not just about the technology. It's about all the other things that make up being able to do something, including stakeholder engagement at the local level, diversification in the financing. So,
Right.
you know, engineers love to think about, well, we have this great rocket, but it's governance, which is what I study. The ability to get the thing done is more than just having the technical capability.
Yeah, you know, Timmy, you and I have spoken, you know, at other times about the industry itself, the commercial industry being a huge driver for economic development in these regions. You know, Steve Wolf and I at Global Spaceport Alliance always talk about how you revive big chunks of an economy or a region in a post-industrial hangover that is perhaps as exciting in many ways as the industry itself. Do you still see commercial space and its growth as an economic driver, as an economic development play for a region, a city, a state like Ohio, you know, which has all this industrial capacity and tech now?
Absolutely, if you can integrate space into the local economy, right? It's not just, you know, in Arizona here, I held a big event. It was called Integrating Space in the Local Economy. I think I spoke to you about it.
Yeah.
And Arizona, everyone knows about the 5 Cs that make up Arizona: cotton, citrus, climate. Like, these are where the economic activity is. Now, when you go to the space events, you don't see the cotton guys there. You don't see the climate guys there. And so, you know, I do think it's exciting, but if you realize that there is an existing economy in that place and you have to be able to fit in with the existing economy. Now, when you're talking about completely starting from scratch, this is where, you know, my expertise in emerging markets and developing countries is really interesting, right? And everybody talks about, well, Africa is along, you know, the equator runs right there. Should we have a launch site, you know, in Kenya or Nigeria or Ghana or any of these places, because it's going to be easier to get up there, right? To launch from the launch site. But again, the same problems. If you don't work on the local economy and ensuring that you have the academic programs to be able to support that, the innovations to be able to figure out what the supply chains will look like, it doesn't matter that the equator is a great place to launch from.
Right. And you have to have a program to keep the talent in place too, because a lot of these places experience brain drain. And so they're not keeping their best and brightest home to drive these new industries. So when a guy like Volodymyr, an entrepreneur, comes along, you know, he's in London or Singapore or New York. We got him here, but you don't keep him back home, and that's a problem. Volodymyr,
Yeah.
I'm gonna, having shouted out your name here, I'm gonna turn back to you. You know, we talk about launch and commercial space companies like Spire creating new business models, in some cases new industries. Have you ever envisioned Skyrora as being the driver of a new kind of industry, a new kind of commercial proposition?
Let's say I've envisioned Skyrora. We have some unique features of our products, right? Which is works as a taxi, as been told today, bus services like SpaceX. It's good, but you know, as long as the market will mature, we need more options and we need more taxis, right? Which is basically be able to be launched whenever we want and be positioned exactly right place on orbit, right? What Skyrora actually trying to do uniquely here is basically we have 3-stage design. With third stage, it has dual purpose. It can put the satellites on orbit, but it also can take down, potentially can take down the 40 satellites. So basically replacement services or such. That is what I see as unique Skyrora, at least, apart from the green and everything else which we need to do, and apart from the B mobile, right? But for more general, let's say, topic, I'm originally from IT. I do remember like the space right now, like internet, early days of internet, right? So we all excited about, but there is no we're excited about by just the idea and, you know, what it can bring to humanity and so on, right? But we are not excited yet how much money we can earn from the space. Like, I mean, like the people on the street, right? That will come. That will come for sure. And same as happened with internet, right? The question is, when. So that is what I can say. Is it 10 years, 20 years, or maybe 1 year, or maybe tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, it's a big day. That could be the game changer for everyone.
Yeah, you never know. What does your instinct tell you?
For tomorrow. Fingers crossed for tomorrow launch, right? So because that would be the most amazing that humanity ever built. But yeah, my instincts tell me that it's like 5 years maximum. So or even less. So once again, I can argue that the small satellites or large satellites doesn't matter. The satellites and significant money being invested in satellites, so they need to get the return. So obviously the satellites need to be launched and the new business model will be developed, right? And I usually, on such kind of questions, if we're talking about publicly, right, I'm starting to tell people, imagine that, GPS services will be subscription based from tomorrow, right? £1 per device, for example, a month, right? $1 per month. That will immediately solve all our industry problem, right? We will have this a huge revenue stream, which then will push the industry forward. But right now, it is what it is, right? On the shoulders of billionaires and the entrepreneurs who are willing to take the risk because they see the future, they see the vision, they want to be the first on the early days of internet in order to get benefits when the internet or new space will actually be developed and be the mainstream.
It's interesting you refer to that, the GPS tax or whatever it is. We did it with telecommunications here in the United States to enable us to provide long distance service out to the rural parts of the country. We put a tax on telecommunication services a long time ago to allow rural connectivity, and it transformed those rural economies. So there is perhaps some innovation.
Yeah, well, that's probably not the most popular word, but I would say, let's say, I will be happy to pay £10 per month, right? Because the GPS became the factor of our life. We cannot imagine our life without it. But for whatever reasons, we're taking it sort of like for free. I'm talking about just ordinary people.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree with you. We don't like taxes in New York, but tax, I guess, is the price of civilization, as someone once said. Robert, I want to ask you, Peter talks about 3 types of satellites: talking, looking, and listening satellites. You guys fall in the listening side. Talk to us a little bit about what that actually means, and how that radio frequency is an advantage for you guys, because I don't know if people fully understand that with Spire.
Sure. It's not the application we immediately think of when we think of satellites, but it is a way to take advantage of signals that are already out there. If we're speaking about GPS or GNSS signals, a lot of Spire's products take advantage of things that are already happening. As a business, we wanted to focus on opportunities where we didn't require the end users to purchase a widget, to do anything active. We're selling data that again takes advantage of ships that are already transmitting, or planes, or the way that GNSS signals are bent by the Earth's atmosphere. These are ways that you can take advantage of the environment. You can monitor the environment again by giving your satellite ears and not eyes. It is a kind of an untapped area. There is much less crowded than something like imagery. There are a lot of amazing products out there around imagery. SAR is huge right now. Obviously not visible in imagery with SAR, but thinking of listening satellites, it's just one more way to augment our understanding of the Earth and what's happening around it, whether that is environmental or human activity. It's one tool in the tool chest to understand what's going on around us.
Yep. You guys have about 700 customers now?
That's right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and in a wide range of customers. Globally, from governments to commercial, from commodities, insurance, traders, anybody that's interested in what's happening around them. It sounds ambitious. It is ambitious, but it really is about increasing the knowledge and making life better for every human on the planet by providing these insights. One of the things that we do is we do provide, we focus on applications where the number of sensors and distribution of them is more important than the maybe the size and fidelity of the instrument. So instead of having a single large pristine instrument that can do one thing in a very narrow area, lots of distributed sensors all over. Again, back to this constellation mindset. It's about revisits and latency, how often we can see something and how often we can get back to see it again.
Yep.
Those are the applications that we focus on.
And you're over 100 times a day, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there's not a square kilometer on the globe that we don't visit multiple times a day.
Yeah, I'm probably showing my bias. I think you guys are just an exciting company.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a little biased as well.
You might be, yeah. Makes me proud to be in the industry. Well, listen, gee, this went fast, but we've got a little bit more time. Tamara, do we have any comments or questions? Because I know we've got a lot of people out there, and I know the young people tend to ask questions. Anything out there for our panel that you want to plug?
Well, I have a comment. I'm not sure I completely understand it, but I'm going to leave it to you experts to understand it. So, and maybe later on, Bharat might join us. But anyway, Bharat says, to terraform Mars with the help of direct space technology will take 3,000 years, while by utilizing alternating space technology, it will only take 20 years. Alternating space technology is the same as alternating current invented by Tesla. I don't think it was invented, but okay. But anyway, does anybody know how to respond to that? Because I'm not sure. And I also had a question myself. I'll just ask.
We'll ask Bharat later, unless someone wants to.
Okay, I'll ask this question. I was really intrigued by the way that you all have put forward that the industry is tending to consolidate towards large vehicles, large launch vehicles. And I'm looking at them saying, well, okay, so if we're being forced to take the bus, then what? How do you get to your destination when you get up at your nearest exit? So as we're thinking this through about infrastructure, I just wanted to throw that out there. So over to you.
I think that's an excellent question. Vladimir touched on this a bit, but we have this concept of orbital transfer vehicles, or space tugs, as they're colloquially known. And they are that in-space Uber, if you will. They're that thing that takes you from where the bus is going to where you really want to be. This is a whole ecosystem that's developing. There is a lot of development in this area. Lots of players that are in space today doing this. Spire has relationships and contracts with them. We're excited about this part of the market as well. Again, we are in the enviable position where we get to root for all of them. All of their success is our success. One of the downfalls is performance. It's time. When you think about a space tug, often they'll do some sort of a transfer maneuver and then wait for precession to bring you to where you want to be. Sorry, I'll pull out from a little bit of the technical speak and just say it takes time. So once you launch, you may be talking about, it may be as short as weeks, but it could be many months before you get to the orbit where you want to be. And as we all know, time is money. And if you can get there on a small vehicle that can directly inject you for the right price, that would be preferable over time. So an option that's out there, this market is growing and will continue to be very valuable, especially if or as the market continues to consolidate onto larger vehicles.
We're going to go to put your seatbelts on, because we're going to go to the New York Minute in a minute. But Timmy, you had your hand up. Do you want to just give us one quick comment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that I think about space is either space as a canvas or space as a mirror. When we see space as a canvas, it's about who we want to be and who we want to become. But when we talk about logistics and policy and all this, it's really space as a mirror, like who we actually are. And so I think that space people are optimistic about where we're going. But if we look at who we are, I mean, the Space Force got $26 billion in funding, right, which is more than NASA got, which means that we're still not there yet with respect to all these things that we think that where we're going to be or where we are. So like I said, for me, the innovations is really around procurement. So when we look at, organizations like, say, Spaceflight Inc., which helped you find a launcher just by going online, or Skywatch Space Solutions, who's an EO broker, or SatSearch, who's a marketplace for buyers and suppliers. I mean, the ability, we're still at that point now where the innovations around helping you get what you need is where the big market is. For newer actions.
Okay. And you also suggested in there that we need to change. And my priest, Father Walter Wagner, would say, I don't know if we can get rid of original sin, but we can change ourselves. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to go to the New York Minute and our friend Joe Fargnoli. Joe, you've been listening to this great conversation. What's your response?
Well, Lou, it has in fact been a great conversation, and I thank everyone for joining. I see three categorizations in launch. I see sovereign launch, where that is run by governments, companies like ULA, Arianespace, the launch contingent of the Chinese, the Indians, and the Japanese. That is a sovereign capability that is based on national competition and meeting national need. There's also a private, or I'll call it a VC model. This is based on lean startup methodology type approaches of approaching the market incrementally and using vehicles like SPACs. And there's been a range of companies out there, Rocket Labs, Relativity, ABL, that whole list that I put out there. They face challenges with fickle markets that may not be patient, and launch certainly requires patience. So if we compare these two, we've got sovereigns who are really not trying to do commercial things that are meeting national needs. We've got companies under the private or the VC model that are subject to the whims of the markets. But then we've got this category where we have what I would call individual sovereigns, the billionaires. The billionaires have enough money to do what they want to do. And when it comes to space, the need to have the long-term sustaining power like governments, but the ability for private individuals to project their vision of what the future can be and maybe should be is very unique. So I look at the role that Starship, New Glenn, New Shepard will play in shaping the new space economy. Maybe we need to come up with a space version 5.0. I don't know. But I think it's important to see these three separate domains. Robert's company has done great in the VC model for how they've grown their business, and they've used SpaceX. In fact, I think Monday they launched 3 vehicles on the Transporter 7 successfully. Congratulations. And Volodymir's model is basically in the sovereign regime, where they're working, I think, closely with the UK government. Pardon me if I'm not incorrect there, Volodymyr, but creating a national capability. But I think, I really like the way Timmy described, the role of the billionaires. We're not here to beat up those people who've made money either on PayPal or selling books online, but it's actually quite admirable the way they've taken up a unique section of this market and been able to have long-term staying power to really transform the new space economy in a sense that, our topic today was commercial space infrastructure. Moving big stuff to space to create infrastructure takes big, heavy launch vehicles. We've not seen an efficient commitment on the parts of governments to be able to do that in a way that's economically effective. Artemis is a great vehicle, but it's not going to propel the new space economy. So I really appreciate the way we did not use this session today as an opportunity to beat up on those far more successful than any of us, but we use it to kind of accentuate the differences between these domains. We're not saying billionaires, good, government, bad at all. We're simply creating this distinguishment. So when we think about, how do we want to see our roles in the new space economy, and we're always looking at this from the investor standpoint, what is the way to create the awareness and the understanding of the reality of the commercial launch market? We can consider these three categories. I hope some of the information I put in the chat, which was largely generated by Carlos Niedenstrauser, who's with Northrop Grumman, who for years has been maintaining this launch database, can be considered. And when we think about, what do we want to support and launch, we think about these three different models, and it's really stunning how in the billionaire category, Elon has seen Starship through to an amazing place. I'm just dumbstruck by how far Starship has gotten in how short a period of time. I hope someday we're going to see a new Glen and a new Shepherd launch, but Jeff keeps on funneling money into that every year, and we see signs of great progress. The outliner there is why Branson didn't put more money into supporting Virgin Orbit and ended up relying on the public markets. So that was kind of the outlier as to whether he really belongs in that billionaire category or the VC model category. So from my perspective, the New York Minute perspective, I think, seeing this discrimination between these different categories and what each enables is probably an important point to consider, because we do want to see that commercial space infrastructure get up there. We want to see the Axioms of the world take off and start building habitations and commercial space stations. And unfortunately, there is a very unique role here that the billionaires are playing that I think historically will be recognized as important as Columbus and the Queen Isabella relationship, right? I don't see governments doing it efficiently, and I don't see small VC models doing it efficiently. So they have their place in the sun here.
Very good, Joe. Thank you for laying that out for us. And we'll get a reaction on that shortly. But before I do, I want to take us through what's coming up next. Matt, thank you. Next week, some big news. Joe and I and Tamara are happy to report. The New York Space Business Roundtable is going live for an event. We'll be over at Milbank Law here in New York, over in Hudson Yards, for an event with Astroscale. And we'll be talking about in-service services, which Astroscale's president will be talking to. And we're very happy to have as the moderator of that event, Michael Sheets, the space reporter for CNBC. I'm inviting you as a loyal subscriber to this roundtable. If you're around New York, you are welcome to attend that event. And so let us know. There's a way to register. And again, that's April 26th. And there's a welcoming reception followed by a panel. And well, you can read. There it is. But we're very excited about the fact that we're now going with live events as well. So it'll be a nice balance between our third week event here and what we're going to be doing in New York. So are you excited about that, Joe?
Absolutely. Sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay. The next two episodes that we're setting up today by talking about launch, you can see there, we will be talking about some of the things that our guests have been speaking about today. We're titling it Catching Asteroids, Cleaning Debris, and Data Mining. And then we'll be talking about issues of regulatory regimes, spaces, the Wild West, East, North, and South. And be talking a little bit more about giving some shape to the commercial regulatory environment, but not in a dry way. As we do, we'll be talking about it in a more open way. So that's coming up May 17th. You can register for that now, and June 21st. And Tamara, I think people can register for every event at one time.
Yes, that's true.
Yes. Oh, our friends at World Teleport Association have a very good report out called Ground Segment Just a Service, where they'll be talking about what teleports in the ground segment are doing now to provide a range of value-added services. And Robert, you'll probably be interested in this one, having built all those ground stations. But we've tried to take a look through World Teleport Association's eyes of what the teleports are thinking about businesses like yours and Volodymyr's and others. So that's out now. You can go to worldteleport.org. I'm not sure exactly what it costs, but if you're a member, you get it for free. So, hey, as they say at WTA, why not join? And our SSPI WISE organization will be having an event on April 27th, 2023 at 11 o'clock a.m. Tamara, anything else we need to know about that?
Yes, this was originally slated to be an open meeting. It's probably going to switch to be a closed meeting as we organize ourselves for next round of elections for SSPI WISE. But all of the women of the industry are invited, and whenever we do have an open meeting, all of the industry is invited. So please, if you are an ally of women, let them know that this is happening. You can see SSPI WISE on the website, on the SSPI website.
Very good. Timmy, are you a member of SSPI WISE yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We need to solve that, Timmy.
And that goes for all the listeners out there who are women in our audience. It's our fastest growing special interest group. So speak to Tamara if you have any questions about participating. One of our fastest growing products is the Space Business Qualified online course. As the business grows, as we continue to take on new people from different industries and try to attract talent, we have, of course, our online course that is designed by SatProf in conjunction with the Global VSAT Forum. You can go online at spacebq.org and actually take a free course just to take a trial run before you actually launch. But we're told by HR managers and actually CEOs that it's been a great way to both attract, retain talent, and kind of teach people the business that they're in as it changes and grows. So it's kind of, in many ways, a liberal arts course, but gets very specific about being qualified for this great industry, SBQ. And we're starting a new campaign here at SSPI. We'll be doing podcasts and reports and webinars, thanks to the Challenger family. Reducing the risks of space begins May 8th. And if you're able to tune into any of those, we do a podcast every Monday for the next, I think, 6 weeks, starting May 8th, I believe, on that. And we'll be talking about the various risks in space, all of from debris to things that are more social. And we do this in honor of those that have been lost in human space flight. I think somebody said earlier, we need to remind ourselves that this is not an easy industry, but it is one that advances the entire species. So we're going to honor that by continuing to carry forward the dialogue of how we make a better world through space. And I think that's what we have. Tamara, are we going to open the mic now?
We are. And so I want to open the floor up to, first of all, let's make it so that people can unmute themselves. Chad, if you want to ask your question to the panelists, I'm going to invite the panelists back on screen. Unfortunately, John Conafay had to leave us, but Chad, you're welcome to ask your question.
Certainly. I put it into the chat, but I can essentially read it and add a little bit onto it. So I asked, with relation to space's PR problem, what have each of you found as an effective pitch for people who aren't inspired by exploring the cosmos in the way that a lot of us are? There are a lot of different methods that have been thrown around of going towards climate and a bunch of technologies on Earth, but I'm curious what each of you have found as one thing that you kind of tend to go towards that people tend to resonate with.
You want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I have so much to say about this because I started my career in a developing country, the Nigerian Space Agency. I was like in the first team of lawyers, and that was a big thing to deal with, right? Because it's like people are dying and starving and hungry, and you're talking about space. And so, right from the very beginning, I had to be very granular about why anyone should care about space. And I think that is the first thing before any marketing. It's space people getting into their heads that actually it may not be as cool as you think it is, right? To the people that you're talking to. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Laura Delgado, who works at NASA. She has a great paper in Space Policy Journal that's online called When Inspiration Fails to Inspire. And it's just such a great piece to talk about the whole Apollo thing and how the Apollo generation, Artemis is the same language, it's the same thing, but we're in a different era now. The kind of Apollo thing and that whole competition and, dominating and domineering isn't really inspiring for a lot of people. So, rethinking that's a great article to read. My go-to thing is glocalization. So thinking global, but acting local. And what that means is everyone is fascinated to hear about the rise of space globally. So when I go tell people there are 20 countries in Africa that do space, there's an African Union Space Agency, people are like blown away because they're surprised that how it scaled because it started with just 2 countries, right? But at the same same time, I talk about the local economy. So what does space mean for the guy walking down the street, and how does it relate? So that's what I mean by globalization. Thinking global, telling people the global story, and then narrating, well, how does it affect you? So we're all one together. Those are my tips.
Very good. And of course, you got the Psyche mission where you are. So that's probably inspiring a lot of people out of Arizona.
But the Psyche mission, we made it very, very, there's artists, there's musicians, there's so many different actors involved in that.
Yeah, and we're going to go out and find some metal in the asteroid as well. So there's an economic piece of it. Volodymyr, you've inspired people yourself. That's sort of the charismatic notion. But is there another way that as you grow Skyrora, you plan on inspiring people?
Yeah, usually what I do, right, is basically trying to tackle all those PR negativity which is appeared to be happen when we start talking about Mars and such kind of space tourism and so on, right? So I usually say that we don't care about Mars. We need to fix our own planet before we will start to terraform something else, right? Let's stop the terraforming of our own planet, and that is the space plays the crucial role here, right? And then for the last year, of course, I will also start to point defense as a key factor for obvious reasons. Defense became, unfortunately, defense became actual and came to our lives. So that's why, in terms of the PR, we're trying to explain people that they save the planet, and plus, space it's crucial for defense. And that usually is enough to people to stop thinking about Mars and colonization of other species and whatever it is.
Yeah. It inspires me to think that the work we do helps defend democracy, the free world, that's in that mix. I think that's a very noble goal. But again, that's something that's a personal opinion. Robert, I think, again, Spire has inspired a lot of people just by virtue of its success. But the question was the PR problem that we have. What do you guys do on the communication side to get people to think about this industry?
Yeah, I think Timmy did such a great job of answering that question. Not much to add, just to say it is about the applications. Bring it down to how everyone, when they hear something, is going to ask, what about me? What does that mean for me? So if we can make that connection for them, how does this application, how does this technology improve their life, make a difference to them, impact them? That's the connection we have to make.
Yeah, and in 2015, of course, we designed at SSPI the Better Satellite World campaign, bettersatelliteworld.com. And we've just been telling the stories about what this industry does for people, from helping to eradicate polio to making sure that people are able to get water, and all of the things that satellites do. And of course, Spire does a lot of that as well. So we encourage people listening who don't know about the Better Satellite World campaign to go to bettersatelliteworld.com, take any of those videos, any of those podcasts, because, to your question, that was the whole idea, to make sure that people know that the people you hear from today are actually transforming the world. And that's no lie. And not many people can make that claim when they go to work in the morning. So, Joe, any final word on how we can make the industry even more pronounced for people? He's thinking about the next New York Minute, Tamara. We've got about a minute left. I want to thank our guests today for showing up. Robert, Volodymyr, Timmy, it's great to see you. John, who had to cut out, he's at the symposium. Joe Fargnoli for our New York Minute, which is always terrific. We'll see you next month on the third Wednesday of the month. Tamara Bond-Williams, Matthew Owen, and the entire team at SSPI, Ari Yates. We couldn't do this without you. So we really appreciate all the hard work you do to get this ready for us each month. We hope to see some of you next week in New York. In the meantime, remember, let's go out and make it a better satellite world. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.